Hey everyone, Mark Holloway with Meridian Medical Staffing. I'm sitting here with one of my obviously top senior recruiters, Connor Velvin. A lot of you guys know Connor, a lot of you work with Connor. So today we're going to continue our series that is how to make six figures as a travel nurse. And today's topic is going to be working overtime. So definitely a lot of things to kind of cover first. And I think Connor's going to touch on that. I think one of the main things is make sure you're working for a company that if you're going to work overtime, the whole caveat to this is make darn sure that you're getting paid time and a half of the right amount, right?
For me, I always get quotes from other companies. I always talk to nurses who are, interested in coming on board with us, and they always say, well, here's how I'm used to being paid. And right away I see, overtime is being paid 95% of the time is a taxable hourly rate.
Time and a half of that.
Time
right?
and a half
Yeah.
is a taxable hourly rate, which, right away I'm like, whoa, you're losing money that you should be getting. And I always ask them right away when I see it, how much overtime do you work? And they always go, well, not that much because I don't get paid that much.
Why would you do it?
Right, and for me, I'm like, well, that's crazy. That's the whole point of overtime is to make more money. And so the big part is, number one, if you're going to be working overtime, find a company, like ourselves. I don't know if there's, I personally haven't seen anybody else that does it, but that will pay you time and a half of the full hourly rate and not just the taxable portion. That's the main thing right there when you look at overtime. And there's a reason why a lot of the nurses I bring on board, they start working 50 plus hours a week because they see it in their check right away.
We get a lot of overtime here. I think, again, if some of you are confused, if this is the first video from our company you've ever watched, I would urge you to go to our Facebook page, like our page, go back and look at this series that says Understanding Your Offer. We've done 6 or so of these that really break down competitors' offers and why they're so dangerous. And most of them, as we saw, is because they're only paying time and a half of a tax amount, which sometimes is only 40, maybe 40 to 60% of your total true hourly compensation.
I highly encourage you to go watch it, and even with yourself now, if you have a pay stub that you can look at or break it down, I highly recommend you do that, and then don't be scared to ask questions to your current recruiter agency, because that's where you're going to figure out how much wiggle room, is this the truth, and then you'll learn real quickly.
Right. So I guess before we start this conversation, the main thing is choose a company that make it worth your while to take time off, because you could do all the overtime in the world and you're not going to make 6 figures if you're working for one of these big companies that's only paying you, let's say your total compensation is $30, but they're only going to pay you 20 of it taxable, which means time and a half of that is back up to $30 an hour.
Well, I'm involved in a lot of groups, like Facebook groups, and I always see 20 an hour, 30 OT, and I'm like, that's right away wrong.
So a company like ours, if we have $30 an hour, you're making $45 an hour.
Right.
Part of that obviously is tax-free. The way that we do it's supposed to be the right way. So again, the first thing on this conversation is, if you're working for a company that's not paying you properly for overtime, don't work overtime. They've actually incentivized you not to. So step one to making 6 figures on overtime is choose a company like ours that pays you a ton of money for overtime. I'm using a low rate at $30 an hour because the math is simple.
Right.
But if you do that, now let's talk a little bit more about overtime. Obviously, there's some times when a hospital doesn't offer overtime. I think these are things that if it's important to you and you want to make 6 figures, this is a question you should be asking during your interview. If you're a money-getting traveler, and we're encouraging our nurses, if you're going to sacrifice and not have a job every 3 months and have to be looking for a job, there are sacrifices you make darn sure that this is something that you bring up during your interview. And have it become part of your decision process. If a hospital says, no, we never do overtime, and by the way, guys, they typically only bill us an extra $10 an hour. So it really actually is worth their while.
Do you go over that in your video as well?
I do a little bit, yeah. So our rate that most of us agencies are able to charge a hospital isn't time and a half because we've already incorporated our fixed costs. Again, go back and look at some of our other series to understand that better. But it's really pretty affordable. If they have, let's say, a $70 bill rate, we're typically only able to bill them $80 for anything over.
No, that didn't used to be the case. When travel first started and vendors got involved, we used to be able to bill the hospitals time and a half, and we could pay our nurses even more than that.
Hospitals got smart, and they figured out that there's no additional cost for us except for payroll. So again, ask that question, choose a company right, and ask the question, if you're a go-getter and you want to make 6 figures, hey, is overtime available because I'd be interested in that. Now again, my advice personally wouldn't be to have that be the first thing that's coming out of your mouth during an interview.
Make them love you first.
Yeah, have them fall in love with you and then say, oh, by the way, is overtime an option? Because I'm coming out there to really do a great job for you and to be a relief on your schedule as opposed to putting more demands on it. And if you find that hospital, have that come into play. If you've got, if you're a great nurse, you got a couple offers and one of them has overtime available and you want to make 6 figures, jump on that. That extra money might even be worth, even if that job's paying $1 or $2 less an hour, if you're able to get overtime and really drill down and ask that question, look at the big picture and say, maybe this assignment is gonna pay more. Now, again, we recognize, and I think the hospitals too, you're gonna earn it, because you're gonna be working an extra shift, maybe a week, every other week, who knows? But this is a great start. You can make great money looking at rates, but you can make really good money if you can start working some overtime.
Nothing's better than sending nurses pay stubs where they're working overtime. You get to call them and congratulate them on how much money they made, break it down for them, and really help them understand that they're being paid correctly. And that only helps them wanting to work more and get paid more money.
Ironically, this week I saw you had 2 nurses that worked over 60 hours. And they got some nice checks coming, which is a nice conversation for you, because when you call them and you talk to them on Friday and just, hey, how are things going? You got a nurse with a lot of money in his or her pocket, which is nice.
Right, it goes a long way for them. It makes my job easier, and at the end of the day, it's just a better thing for these nurses, and that's why we do it too. We got in this business to help people who help people, and so that's why we want to help educate. We want to help make sure nurses know how to make the most money possible, and a lot of it is in overtime, but also being paid overtime correctly.
Right. Right. You can, again, this series is about making 6 figures, and one of the biggest things we talked about is, location and chase the money last week. This week really is have overtime be a big variable, because if you're working for the right company that pays you effectively overtime, and you find the right job that has it available and is not ashamed or scared about paying that extra $10 an hour because they need the help, that really should weigh heavily on your decision, because if you do that 2 out of maybe 4 assignments a year, you're going to make 6 figures.
Well, my nurses will always text me or call me and say, hey, my manager just asked if I could come in tomorrow and I'm scheduled not to work. What do you think I should do? And I can never make a decision for somebody, but if I understand where they're coming from, what their financial goals are, learn about my nurse and help them be the best traveler that they can, I'm going to instruct them accordingly. Hey, you came out here to make as much money as possible. I would pick up the shift. Or, what kind of plans you have going on the rest of the week. Maybe it's better to nod and ask for another shift. But at the end of the day, you want to do what's best for you. But if you're trying to make money, overtime is correct.
We'll end it with this. I was taught from a guy back, I won't say how many years ago, but he said, get it while the getting is good. What you don't know is, will there be overtime available next week? Will there be overtime available on the next assignment next year? My suggestion is, if you want to make a lot of money, surrender the fact that you're going to become, open to every opportunity for overtime. Get it, because you don't know what next week is going to be like. They may hire somebody, a new nurse, and you don't have their overtime. So get it while you can, and that's the kind of nurse that makes 6 figures. All right, guys, we appreciate it, and thank you, Connor, for joining us today. We will see you guys again next Friday for another edition to this series as well. Talk to you soon.